Peter, we got Shannon on the line. What do you want to ask him?
How do you weed out partners, good and bad?
Look for partnerships that have value to everyone more than just you have a deal and I have some money. We have to be partners.
Hey, I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different from everything else out there. I bring together new and inspiring investors on each and every episode and let the aspiring investors ask the questions that they need answered. And if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably have the same questions. So before you get to this episode that we have prepared for you, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that little notification bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. I'm very excited for today's show. It's another one of our Ask the Expert episodes, and we've got a couple of Pacific Northwest people on the line with us today. We've got Shannon Robnett, who is currently in Boise, Idaho, and Peter Chege, who's active duty Army at Fort Lewis McChord, just south of Seattle. That said, as is tradition, our experienced investor is up to the plate first. Shannon, welcome.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you having me. And to both of you guys, thank you for your service. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
All right. Well, Shannon, do us a favor. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I grew up in a real estate family. In fact, just last week, I was with Robert Kiyosaki, and he reminded me that I'm that one guy that told him that his book did nothing for him. Because quite honestly, I grew up at a dinner table full of poor dad conversations. My mom was a real estate broker and everything, and my dad was a developer. And I always heard about 1031s and we should sell this and we should buy this and we should rent this. And my dad retired at 50 from cash flow. He was able to get out of the grind and everything. And I wasn't going to do any of that, Brian. I'd seen my fill of the late nights and the missing birthday parties because the concrete was not doing what it was supposed to do. And I was going to go to college. I was informed on my first day of college that I had to keep coming back. And I really didn't like that part, first of all. But then there was the whole process. And I was watching my younger brother make money building houses. And I was really kind of starting to do some math about how long college was going to take me to get where I could be independent of that and pay back what I was borrowing and all that stuff. I quickly pivoted out of there and went to work in residential. I built a couple houses. I had this one particular homeowner that cured me of ever wanting to build a house again. I went into commercial. I built everything from schools to hospitals, city halls, fire stations, police stations, large retail, warehouses, multifamily. And as I grew in that career, I realized that I got tired of working for everybody else because I could go out there and I could build a building. And as soon as I was done doing all the work, they got all the benefit.
Yeah.
Now they paid for that. But if I could start to put some of these things together for myself, then I could keep the cash flow that they were getting once I was done. Because the minute I was done, they didn't keep paying me. That was kind of one of the deals that we had. I'll build it, you pay me, and then we're done. And so I began to work with a couple of partners here, a guy there that liked what I was doing and was willing to write some checks. And we got involved in partnerships. But I quickly found out that my ability to bring deals to the table outgrew their ability to write checks. And so I was constantly looking for new check writers. And then about 2.5 years ago, I stumbled into the world of syndication that allowed me to essentially use retail investors, people who were tired of flipping houses or trying residential realtors to find single family home product or whatever, that wanted to partner up, wanted to not do any of the work, but wanted to reap the benefits. And so I got into that world. And since then, we've had quite a bit of success, but it's just been the ability to build more, do more quicker, provide more, and as we know right now, we're in a housing shortage.
Yeah. And that housing shortage has been around for a while, and it's my understanding it's growing every year. So it's a business where a lot of people are going to be able to do fairly well for quite a while if you believe supply and demand economics. I love that. So you started building houses, went bigger and bigger and bigger. And, I'm basically boiling this down to, something very simple. Saw the other side of the fence where they were making passive income, or they were setting up income streams for themselves instead of being transactional. And now, if I understand it right, you're on both sides of the equation.
I'm definitely on both sides. I mean, we develop most of our stuff is ground up. We've got 250 units under construction currently with another 800 in the pipeline. We've got deals from Washington to Florida. We've got some industrial we develop, we're doing some value add stuff, and we're helping retail investors invest in their future in asset classes that are typically reserved for Wall Street.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great model. I love the syndication model. Now, so when you were transitioning, you said you made a couple partnerships with check writers, and you said you started realizing that you could bring deals to the table faster than they could write checks. How did you start finding new people to invest?
That was a hard transition for me because, believe it or not, Brian, I'm an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people that I wanted to talk to were under the age of 18. They were my kids. And so I didn't really enjoy going out and finding new people to talk to. I just wanted to go hang out with my family. I started out my syndication career asking people to help me.
Mm-hmm.
And I quickly realized, Brian, it's not about me. I mean, I have a problem that I need to solve for me. If I approached it that way, people don't really want to solve your problem. They want your help to solve their problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started to look at it and say, hey, you know what, Brian, what is it I can help you with? Well, my problem is I just paid too much in taxes and I really don't like doing that. Brian, I might have a solution for that. Or would you be open to looking at how real estate can reduce your tax burden? When I began to approach it like that, it became conversational.
Yeah.
And it became something that it wasn't me beating my head against the wall going, oh my gosh, I got to find a rich guy that can write a check for $1 million. I began to find ordinary people that had tax problems. They had inheritance that they'd never had $250,000 before in their life. And they'd exchange that for their mother's presence again any day, but they had this and they had to do something with it, right?
Yeah.
They received a settlement or something. And I just saw where helping these people solve a problem that they didn't anticipate or didn't know how to fix was the basis that created the relationships that have led us to where we're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that transition and mentality. And incidentally, I went through the same thing, same process. And I realized that we had a product that helped other people. It was a game changer for me. Just like you were saying for you, it had that effect on me to where raising money from other people or raising capital became a lot easier just by making that one single switch for me.
It really does. And like most people will tell you, Brian, 85% of this game and most games is in your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one script that I had to rewrite inside my head. It wasn't a light bulb moment. I wish it was. It was something that I learned probably over the course of several months that
you learned it faster than I did.
It could have been several years actually, but from when I really started raising capital to when I started realizing that I had opportunities that other people were looking for. And you mentioned it, it's stuff that a lot of people outside of Wall Street don't have access to. So we're bringing a product to people that is going to do them a lot of good and in turn do us a little bit of good too. I love hearing about that. So let's talk about one of the projects you've been involved with. So pick your first or favorite and let us know some of the things that you guys do.
So we exited a project in January, and it was kind of the last of my joint venture single partnerships. But it was one that we got involved with and we built 180 units of ground up. We had to get some rezoning stuff done. We had to do a subdivision. I mean, it was a 4-year process. We started it late 17 and just exited in 22, but we were able to build 180 units. We extended 1,100 feet of road, all brand new clubhouse, everything like that. And actually, when we sold, we set the bar for sales price in our market. From there, we were able to transition into a couple other deals that we're doing. Really bringing new product to an area is something that takes a little bit of expertise. I've grown a lot in that for sure. What I thought I was doing right, that last one, it was one of those, I'm kind of glad I sold it because the things I would do different, I get to do. That's the creative part of me that loves that. But, we've just been able to see that. And everybody thinks that building multifamily is so hard. But I'll tell you, Brian, you're building the same building 19 times.
Yeah.
So if you don't have it figured out by the third time, there's really something wrong with you, right? But you keep building it and you keep building it. And now you've got a beautiful complex that is got the grounds involved and everything like that. And it's just, for me, that's a part of it that I think I really like. And seeing that go from a field to a vision to a place that houses 180 families is pretty cool. And then obviously the day after closing, when you see your bank account swell, that's a pretty cool day too. And then looking at how you're going to your next deal and helping your next group of partners get that same realization to their bank accounts.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, something I realized, and once again, took me a long time to realize, but taking an open field to a 180 unit apartment complex, that's the ultimate value add. I mean,
It really is.
yeah, a lot of apartment investors call a value add where you're taking something that's, 15, 20 years old and trying to make it look like brand new. But the ultimate value add, in my opinion, is going from nothing to something. That's really getting to the highest and best use of a piece of land.
Well, the other thing too, Brian, you've got, I mean, there's the sticks and stones, right? I mean, think about a car. Anybody can build a car. You and I can build a car. And maybe we can build it for less than $60,000 that Chevrolet is going to charge you for that new pickup. Probably not in that particular case, but we could definitely do that. But when you convert that, and this is where the real thing that I couldn't quite figure out as a young man that I saw later that my father was doing was he was taking $1 million worth of blocks and trusses and concrete and asphalt and creating something that with the cash flow based on the cap rate was now worth a 1.3 or $1.4 million. That was before the tenant moved in was only worth $1 million. So to really be able to do that and go, wow, we took the current project we got is $68 million of construction, take $68 million and turn that into 85 just by adding tenants. That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And that's also the largest value add that you'll likely add in the history of the complex, is you're really taking it from the bolts, the nuts, the blocks, the drywall, and assembling it all and doing it in the right fashion and then making it valuable. And
then adding that cash stream, turning it into a business. That's the big piece right there. Good point.
Exactly.
So now you mentioned housing crisis and whatnot. With a lot of demographics changing, I mean, we both live in Idaho, which is gotten a lot of people from California moving in, and Oregon and Washington as well. A lot of people from the coast moving towards here. How has that affected what you do over the last couple of years?
It's interesting because it's affected the demographics in Idaho a lot. I think like a lot of towns or cities, whatever. When I was a kid growing up here, if you lived in an apartment, your parents had bad credit. Everybody owned a home. But now we're having people that are not used to living in houses that want that lock and leave lifestyle. They moved to Idaho not to mow the lawn, but to go hike in the hills, to go river rafting, to go fly fishing, to go do those things. And so they don't want the responsibilities that we're all thinking about. And now as you see interest rates changing too, a lot of those people that may have wanted the housing are now gravitating back toward the apartment lifestyle because it is really a way of life. It's not something that is your step from your parents' house to your own home. In a lot of cases, it is the desired end result. And we've seen that as we're building these new complexes, and we're building them with granite countertops or quartz countertops and high-end flooring and nice finishes and clubhouses that are better than any movie theater you could go into because they have those upscale finishes that people want to go use that as a place to meet their neighbors and to hang out and be a part of a community.
Yeah, that's huge. Now, I mean, I was 20 years in the military. Most people know that, but I actually rented more than I owned. And I'll be honest, we own our house right now, but there sure are times when, something breaks and I wish I was renting. Yeah.
Right.
Talk about the lifestyle.
It's a one payment does do it all. You're not replacing air conditioning. You're not doing all those kinds of things. When the roof leaks, it's not your problem. All of those kind of things, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there is definitely a lifestyle issue. And I can definitely see, I've got my youngest daughter is in second grade right now, but when she graduates high school, I could see me living in an apartment again, I mean, just back into exactly what you're talking about, the granite countertops. And the only issue I would have is where would we put the grandkids, where are they going to fit in everything? Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, the lifestyle is huge, being able to live the lifestyle you want, I think is a lot more important now than it was 10, 20 or 30 years ago. So.
Well, and Brian, we're actually designing another complex that is kind of geared a little bit toward you. right? In that life has gone full circle, and we're actually putting in 3 guest suites for rent, right?
Nice.
So when the grandkids do come to town, there's a 2-bedroom apartment that's available for you to rent for up to 6 nights in a row, right?
That's a good
So
idea.
we're really kind of thinking through that because it is becoming, it's not a transitionary process. It is what we're here for.
Yeah, I love that idea. It's a great idea. Anyway, let's shift gears a little bit. A question I like to ask everybody, more along the lines of motivation. But what is your big burning why?
Funny enough, a lot of people do this for the money, and that's definitely part of it. But one of the things that I saw, Brian, in 2008 was I saw Wall Street get filthy rich on all the poor decisions that they made, and I saw myself, my family, my friends, everybody I knew in the construction industry get destroyed. And as I began that process of getting out of that downturn and into the next upswing, I knew that I had to figure out a way to not only protect myself, but protect other people, because I didn't want to get in a situation that I had my money in the stock market. I had my money in a place I couldn't get to, because it was very clear in 2008 that Wall Street didn't care about me. I mean, they sold all these crappy loans, right? And now the stock market's going back down and people are getting crushed again and retirements are evaporating and there's no real asset behind it. As I kind of began my journey again, I just realized that I had to figure out a way to help myself and others get into cash flowing assets that would protect us against upside, downside, and really continue to produce results, regardless of what the morons with the money on Wall Street did to us.
Yeah.
And so that's really kind of been my transition into the syndicated model and into some of the other things that we're doing to help others learn what we know so that they don't have to fall into that same trap of put your money in a 401k, an IRA, and hope it's there in 40 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that I noticed. I mean, I bought my first single family home as a rental in 2007. And, the market crashed, and I mean, it was my first one. I was a little nervous. I mean, I think I had more confidence than I should have at the time, but here was the great thing about that property is it always cash flowed.
Right.
It didn't matter what the value was at the time because it was cash flowing.
Yeah.
And I knew that over time, whatever dip there was in value would come back. And that's one thing that I think where we're sitting right now with where the economy's at and where the projected future's at. If you can get into a cash flowing real estate asset that's tangible with real value, you're going to be okay for a long time.
Yeah.
So.
And that's what a lot of people forgot in 2007, 2008. They were sold the idea that they could have their McMansion on a $50,000 salary, and so, there's a lot of education that we put together to help people to understand this is what you should be doing so that you're in a position, just like you said, Brian, that you're not over your skis and it's cash flowing, because in times like 2008, 9, and 10, rentals didn't get destroyed, right? And I don't think as we see interest rates continue to rise, I don't think rental prices or rents are going to get hurt at all. In fact, I think it's going to improve them.
Yeah. I mean, inflation, rents are going to go up about the rate of inflation, which, last I checked is over 8%. So, the rents are still going to go up. And even in 2008, the rents went up, inflation adjusted rents went down. And I looked at the stats. This is like nationwide, I'm sure you can pick a metro and prove me wrong, but nationwide rents went up throughout that 2008, the entire recession, 2008 to 2010, rents went up quarter by quarter, every single quarter, adjusted for seasonalities, rents went up. So anyway, I think great points there. What we see going on in the economy right now, there's going to be some issues. There's going to be some bumpy roads, but I think most of the signs are still pointing that multifamily is going to still be a great investment.
Well, I completely agree with you. And you're talking about real assets, whether it's multifamily, whether it's industrial, whether it's office, whether it's retail, you own something that's real. And like you said, Brian, bought correctly, financed correctly, tenantized correctly, it will always produce a return.
Yeah. I was just thinking about something. You talked about taking $68 million worth of stuff. And then once you put tenants in there, there's a lot more money into it, or there's more value there. But I wonder, when you look at replacement costs, that's one way to put a value on real estate is the replacement cost. I'm curious, if there is a dip in the marketplace, construction costs are going up. I wonder if that's going to cause a somewhat of an artificial bottom for real estate prices. Anyway,
Well,
thinking out loud there, but your thoughts.
and it's funny that you mentioned that, because if you think back to the last appraisal you have, replacement cost is one of the things that they do put in the appraisals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the cash, there's the value, which is derivative of the cash flow. There's the replacement cost, and then there's the comps of what's around you.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that, we are resetting a little bit, because if you remember 2008, 2009, cars got cheaper too.
Mm-hmm.
0% financing and $5,000 rebates were everywhere. So you're going to see window prices, because of supply and demand, will go from an 8-week lead time, which we've never had before in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
to now you can get them again in a week like you used to, and the price is going to come back to more of a normal number.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't thought of before, but just connected some dots there. I'll look into that a lot later. Anyway, last question we got for you, and then we'll bring Peter on. But what's next for you?
I hate to say it, but more of the same. I love what I do. I love putting the deals together. We've got a couple of LOIs out. We're working on a couple other things, continuing to educate people on how they can reduce their tax bill, get to a zero-sum game with the IRS, and set up passive income that's going to take them out of their JOB and allow them to live the life they want.
I love that idea of that zero-sum game with I haven't paid a whole lot of federal taxes since I started buying real estate, to be honest with you. That the depreciation is a lovely, lovely thing. So, of course, it's September, so I haven't filed my personal income taxes yet, but I'm expecting a big zero on the bottom line of my taxes this year too. But
right. Yeah. And that's always a great feeling. It's like you won something, you outsnuck the sneaker,
Yeah, right. Now, here's something interesting. And for many, many years, I filed my own taxes, and last year was the first time I paid somebody else to file my own taxes. But I did my own numbers, and I was happy with what it was. And I thought, you know what? It is starting to get more complicated than I'm comfortable with, and sent it off to a CPA, and man, my CPA found a lot more than I did. But anyway,
makes you wonder if going backward might be a good idea.
Yeah, I know. So, but yeah, so end of the day, yeah, I'm very happy, not paying taxes, or at least federal taxes. I pay a whole lot of property taxes though.
Yeah. And you create a lot of jobs with what you're doing.
Yeah. So whole lot of property taxes. Anyway, that said, shifting gears one more time, we're going to introduce Peter. So Peter, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks for your service. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the support. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, I've been a little bit about me.
Yeah.
I've been in the Army for about 4 years now. I joined when I was 18 out of St. Louis, Missouri. My first unit was Hawaii. My first duty station was Hawaii. I am a Chinook maintainer, so I fixed the flying school bus, as I like to call it. So yeah, I was in Hawaii for 3 years, and when I was in Hawaii, I started to invest some of my income. So I put money in my TSP, I put money in stocks, and I also did Turo, which is a car rental app. Yeah. I made actually a lot of money doing that in Hawaii, renting out my just a basic car, a Hyundai, to tourists. I was making about $1,000 a month. So that's when I got my first taste of cash flow and investing. And I also sold Nike sneakers on the side, bought a lot of stocks. When the pandemic hit, I bought like 5 shares of Tesla at $200. So I pretty much made a lot of money there. I sold before it really hit $1,000, but yeah, did a lot of investing in Hawaii. And then towards the end of my tour, I had a goal of flipping a house once I get back to the mainland. So all that cash flow and all that money that I saved, I was going to use all that towards rehab on a home. And it was during that research that I discovered multifamily. And just by doing the numbers, I realized that I could hit my financial goals a lot quicker and a lot with not really less work, but less tiring work on one single property through multifamily. So I shifted my focus and I shifted my research towards that. And I joined a mastermind through ADPI, Active Duty Passive Income, fellow service members, veterans, and spouses that are also into real estate. And yeah, I just finished the mastermind about 2 weeks ago. So now looking to syndicate my first property.
Love it. Love it. And I mean, having spent a little time in the military myself, I mean, I love how you were looking for opportunities. I think a lot of people just, I mean, you're what we affectionately call a wrench turner, in the Marine Corps. You're one of those guys that makes sure the helicopters fly all the time. And I think a lot of guys fall into the trap of just turning wrenches every day, showing up every day and turning wrenches. But, you looked at the opportunities and, with an average car, we started making $1,000 a month. I love that, that you're able to just do that. And then, yeah, same thing, recognizing value. When I first realized the power of multifamily, it was just like, man, I got to do that. I got to do that. I got to do more and more and more of that. So, anyway, good to hear that from you. And I mean, first duty station, Hawaii, you got lucky. So,
yeah,
good for you.
Hawaii was great. If I always say, if anybody has the opportunity to go there, for sure. Cost of living was definitely on the high side.
Yeah.
It's funny coming here to Washington, everyone's like, this place is expensive to live, but to me, everything here is a discount coming from there. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I moved from DC to Idaho, and I mean, speaking of differences, I remember the one person that I knew that lives here in Idaho Falls, when I moved, texted me, and he's like, man, you're moving here at the wrong time. Traffic is terrible. There's a lot of road construction, and I was just scratching my head and like, yeah, I mean, you moving from a higher cost of living area to Seattle, you're just like, I got this.
yeah, it's cake, honestly.
Yeah.
Not too bad so far, but
I
yeah.
got this. Well, cool. So, you talked a little bit about some of the reasons why you like multifamily, but let's dig a little deeper into there. So, what's your big burning why?
I remember during the pandemic, I was still in Hawaii. I was in the Army for a couple years at that point. I remember only working about 1 to 2 days per week. Essentially, I really had a small taste of what financial freedom looked like. Sitting in my barracks room, still getting paid on the 1st and the 15th, and being told, don't come to work.
Yeah.
Wake up, call my supervisor, I'm alive, and I'll turn on Netflix. And I did that on repeat for a few weeks. Eventually, I went back to work and everything, but I realized that there's much more than what I'm doing now. The military is great, and I will never regret joining the military. But really, my big burning why is to have not necessarily all the money in the world, but the freedom to do more with my time, more with my family, be able to give more to my church and to my community, and to help others as well. And I realize this a lot at work whenever we're sitting in the break room talking to the guys. Everybody talks about what they're going to do when they get out. Me personally, I love my job. I love fixing aircraft. But outside the Army, I don't think that's something I would like to do. I noticed the similarity with what everybody wants to do is really to have the freedom to do more and to be at home more with their families and the people that they love.
Love it. I love it. I think that's a common trend for most people, is being able to do what you want when you want. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it very much.
Definitely.
Now we come to my favorite part of the show. Peter, we got Shannon on the line. What do you want to ask him?
One question that I have a few questions. As a brand new syndicator, how do you weed out partners, good and bad, on the general partnership side and on the limited partner side?
Well, Peter, the thing is, it's all about knowledge, right? Just because you have a deal doesn't mean you and I should partner. I mean, what do you want to do with that deal? Are you good at that deal? What's your track record? How do you handle conflict resolution? There's a lot of things that I look at, and I look at every deal as a three-legged stool. You've got the deal, and you've got the expertise, the resume, the know-how, and then you've got the money. And really, they're equal because you can't do anything if you don't have all three. You can be the smartest guy in the world and have the deal, but without the dollars, you're stuck. But if you're the guy that's got the dollars thinks he's the most important guy in the deal, he's going to say that he deserves all the reward. And the person that has the other two is going to feel unwanted and not valued. And so it's not going to be a great partnership. I always want to make sure that what am I bringing to the deal? And what does the other person have that I need? And do I have the ability to learn from them so that I can get more than just that need met today? Don't give a man a fish, teach a man to fish. So if I've got the deal and I've got the know-how, but I don't have the money, I want to work with somebody that will teach me how to better raise money so that he and I don't have to be partners next time. At the end of the day, if we're great partners and we get along, we're going to be partners for a long time.
Yep.
Because if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Look for partnerships that have value to everyone more than just you have a deal and I have some money. We have to be partners.
Yeah, I'll take it one step further. I don't disagree with anything, but just adding to what he said is alignment. I mean, just make sure that you guys have similar goals and similar ideas as far as alignment. There's a difference between, partnering on one deal and deciding to form a company together and partnering on many deals. But if you're going to do the latter, if you're going to, form a company and partner on many deals, make sure that the alignment is complete and it's a deep alignment. It's not a very superficial, hey, we want to make a lot of money alignment, because, that goes away really, really quickly. Make sure you're aligned. And then you asked a question about the same thing with LPs. I think you just need to get to know the LPs. And something that I've found to be very, very useful is to set a fairly high bar on minimum investment amount. Typically, $50,000 is my minimum investment is, because a lot of times when you get into people who want to invest, $10,000 or $5,000, they don't understand the deal very well. They don't understand investing. And it's a lot more difficult to deal with that type of investor. So one super easy thing to do to weed out a lot of LPs that could potentially be problematic, and more because of education, is just to set a high bar.
The other thing too, and I agree with that, Brian, is on the LP side, I won't let anybody invest with me that I haven't had a conversation with. Even though technically as a 506c, I don't have to have a substantive relationship, it's funny how a fly in the ointment can cause problems that you don't necessarily need.
Yeah.
And so when you're having that conversation, and I do this a lot because most of what I do is about appreciation, and we don't see a lot of cash flow and development deals in the early stages. So I want to make sure that the people that are investing with me, they understand my investment philosophy. They understand what my goals are. They understand more than just the number on the paper that says, hey, I'm going to get a 17% IRR, but it's week one and I don't have a check, right?
Yeah.
So just make sure that you know who they are. And I mean, the ones that cause me the most issues are usually the ones with the lowest dollar invested, because it is their only $25,000 or their only 50 grand, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a conversation with somebody just recently who asked to come in at a lower amount. And that reminded me, that's why I brought it up, because the types of questions they were asking were just like, I could tell you don't understand this deal. Maybe we should not do this type stuff. All right,
It's
Peter.
interesting that you guys mentioned that, because I've got two situations where I have one potential investor who's got $4 million and could potentially fund the whole deal, but he has very high expectations, and I think he wants to run the ship for sure.
Yeah.
Whereas I have another investor who has probably about less than 25K, but at the same time, he also wants to run the ship. In fact, he asked me to give him a list of every single potential investor for this deal, which I have never done a deal before, but that question seemed a little unordinary.
Well, the thing is, here's the thing, Peter, people aren't going to, you'll find that 90% of people, maybe as high as 96% of people that get involved in your deals, don't get involved in your deals because they love Charlotte, North Carolina, or they love mobile home parks. They get involved in their deals because of the GP team. They know, like, and trust you guys, and they're there because they have a job that they already do. And they're wanting to invest with you for the purpose of being passive. If they're doing some of the things that these people are doing, and number one, I will never work with a single check writer again. I had great experiences with some. I didn't have awesome experience with others. But the reality is I want to run the show and my expertise says I should. Now, doesn't mean that the guy with the $4 million can't go find his own show to run. And I would encourage him to do that. And it doesn't mean that the guy with 25 grand can't do the same as you, but it means that this is my show. This is the rules that I'm engaging in. And what this tells me is that you don't trust me. Mm-hmm. And we need to solve that problem first, because if we don't have a trust issue, or if we don't have trust built, that you understand that I'm going to take your money and I'm going to do an amazing job with it. And I'm going to do the things that I said I was going to do. And I'm going to work really hard for you. If we can't get past that, that's really kind of the end of the conversation. And God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful time. I'd love to hear where you go with this, but you're not coming with me.
So my next question is, should I wait to invest capital into my own deal or to somebody else's deal?
I would say that if there's one thing I would go back and tell my younger self, it would be to go to work for somebody else. Mm-hmm. I've never had a job. I've never worked for anyone else. And I say that in the same sense that as someone that wants to syndicate, how would you know that your syndication is going the right way unless you've been involved in one or multiple other syndications to see how that functions and how they've treated you? Because I've learned more from bad situations than I have from good situations, but I've learned from everything. So if you're involved in other syndications and you see how it goes and you get involved, obviously do them the favor that you would ask that a LP does with you and stay quiet, right? Mm-hmm. Watch, observe, be involved, see how that went. Because the reality is you will learn more from that situation than you're ever going to learn from any of these boot camps or mentorships or anything like that, because you need to see, you deal with this all the time. You read a manual to fix an airplane, but it don't always go the way the manual says. Yeah. There's that one bolt behind the starter that you can't get to. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. You've got to take it in this sequence. You've got to follow this. You've got to follow that. And until you've actually taken that thing apart, the manual is worthless. Once you've done it, you go back to the manual with a brand new appreciation of, oh yeah, that's what they meant right there, right? Yeah. I mean, how many times you put something together from IKEA only to realize you got to take it apart, turn it 90 degrees and start over, right?
Exactly.
So I would say to do that for sure. Make sure that you are familiar with that. The other thing that it's going to do is it's going to put that on your track record. It's going to put that on your resume. It's going to allow you to say, I understand what an LP is because I've been one, right? And I've done this, and I get that. You'll also meet a lot of really great people in that deal. Those would be the reasons why I would definitely do this first, and then out of that, build out your resume as to, I've done this, I graduated, now I'm doing this with a qualified team, and lastly, I'm doing this as the lead GP on my own team.
Awesome. A lot of good reasons there. And one thing that I would add is on my first syndication, the very first time that I saw a private placement memorandum was on my first syndication that I was involved with. I mean, it was a deal that I found, that I was hustling, that I was bringing to the finish line. At that point, I was sitting down trying to figure out how to explain this to, some of the newer investors that I brought to the table. I had never, ever been in that passive investing experience before. So, for me, it was a much larger, much steeper learning curve. I had the same decision as, like, do I invest with other people, or do I keep the money so I can pay my own EMD, so I can invest in my own deals? Yeah. And end of the day, there's value to both. I can't help but think that I would have been better served investing with somebody else up front. Anyway, we've got time for one more question if you got one.
Yeah, I think this is a good one for my last question. What is the right deal size for your first deal? And do you recommend something more turnkey or something with heavy value add?
That comes down to the experience, and that comes down to the team. If you have someone that has been involved in a lot of heavy value add on the team, that knows what costs are and knows what procurement timelines are. Right now we've got some headwinds with what's going on in the supply chain. So if you've got a heavy value add, you need to make sure that you've got a proven team that can turn that, because what we're seeing things taking a lot longer and things costing more than anticipated by the time you can get your hands on them. And that can add up when you're talking about 200 and 300 units. The other side of that is, once you've aligned, like we talked about earlier, the alignment of your team aligns with the deal. And once the deal looks like something that this team is good at, then you can look at how you're going to pull it off. My personal opinion is go with something that almost makes it impossible to screw up. The less you have to do to get to the finish line and get to success is still massive because it's your first. I mean, you've got to negotiate the contract. You've got to get the bank financing. You've got to take over operations. You've got to reposition the property management company. You've got to get this thing done. And you've got to then turn around and start putting out all the information, start paying out all the people. While you're doing all those things, you're going to start repainting and replacing and redoing and upgrading and moving tenants out to remodel. I mean, you're adding a massive amount of complexity. I would say you want success every single time. Are you going to swing for a home run every single time or just get on first base? Go for that first. Go for that nice, pop the ball, get out there and complete those steps and then tell everybody, I arranged bank financing on a $10 million deal. With that, I would say that purchase price of probably 9 to 15 million is going to be about right because that 15 million is going to mean you're going to be raising about $4 million. You're going to be out there growing your network and getting to that place. A lot of times people say, well, I want to do something small. I want to raise $500,000 to do the deal. You're going to go through all the pain, all the effort to raise $500,000 to arrange the financing, to do the changeover, to do the tenant improvements, to do all this stuff on that amount of money. You might as well make it worth your while and create a team where maybe there's 3 or 4 or 5 of you that are bringing in that amount of money that gets that deal done. So that's kind of my thought process. What do you think, Brian?
I heard somebody, and I've always advocated not biting off more than you can chew on your first deal. And, much of what you said, a lot of head nods in there. You don't want to screw up your first deal. Basically, find something that can get you in the game, get you on base. And I love that baseball reference. Go for the single, don't go for the home run. Find something that you can handle. I listened to Brian Burke on a podcast recently. And he brought a point out that I'm going to reiterate here is he basically said, you have a lot more room to recover on small deals. You're going to make mistakes on your first deal. All right. A smaller deal, you can recover a lot easier from some of the errors, the beginner mistakes that you're going to make than on a larger deal. Where small versus large is on the spectrum, it's all relative, but find something modest, find something that is within your grasp or within your skill set to be able to manage. I think, Shannon's saying a lot of the same things. If you haven't done a heavy value add, you probably shouldn't be doing a heavy value add on your first one. I would say find something modest, get yourself in the game, and then scale from there. Get on base and then start that rally, then get a couple of base hits and then you start swinging for the fences maybe. Anyway, I hope that helps, but we are pretty much out of time. So we're going to cut it off right here. And we got one question for each of you to finish things up. And Shannon, you get to go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
Easiest way is just send me an email at connect@shannonrobnett.com, and I will show you all the ways that you can connect with me from there. We can schedule a call and talk more about how we can work with you. You can work with us and learn more.
All right. And we'll put a link, we'll put that email address in the show notes. And Peter, same question for you.
Yeah, you can email me at peter@capstonesyndicate.com. Brian will link that in the show notes. And also I'm on LinkedIn at Peter Chege. There's only very few people with that name, so it shouldn't be too hard to find.
All right. And yeah, we'll have his email address and link to his LinkedIn profile in the show notes as well. So if you want to connect with any one of these gentlemen, go ahead and hit the show notes and all that information will be right there. That said, thanks a lot, gentlemen, for coming on the show. Very much appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call the Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode or go to thetribeoftitans.info and we'll see you there.